Let's move on now. The Nigeria Police Force has launched a manhunt for 2 individuals accused of plotting to overthrow the democratically elected government in Nigeria. A 20 million naira bounty has been offered for information leading to the arrest of Andrew Wynne, also known as Andrew Povich, a British national, and Lucky Obiyan, a Nigerian force spokesperson. Muyiwa Adejobi alleged that Wynne built a network of sleeper cells to topple the government and create chaos. Wynne allegedly used a school at Labour House as a cover for his activities. Both suspects have reportedly fled the country. A special police gazette bulletin on Monday announced a 10 million naira reward for information belonging to the arrest of each suspect. Joining us in the studio to discuss this issue is UK Solicitor and Public Affairs Analyst Olufemi Aina. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
It's good to have you join us.
Yes, thank you.
Also joining us is Public Affairs Analyst Abiodun Shomi. Good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, Andrew has spoken out of hiding, saying that he did not know he's a fugitive and that he is ready to speak with the government, although not in Nigeria, but in the UK, and then he can have that conversation with anybody from the country. And then the police pay. That's why the person is coming in this manner to say that the husband is trying to topple government. And one wonders how powerful can that person be that is owing the husband in such a way that he is being said to be wanting to topple the government. But let's look at the issues critically. When we talk about toppling of government, we used to hear that statement during the military. And of course, we've had several protests in this country, but none tended towards that direction, so to speak. People just wanted the government to pay attention to issues that necessarily were affecting the people. But now at this point, it seems one wonders, have we evolved from that into having protests that can arrive at a regime change?
Well, it's not impossible, but having said that, let me even assist you with one thing. It doesn't always happen during the military regime alone. What the government seems to be saying is that this man is a mercenary. And what do mercenaries do? They fight for money. And what they have not yet to tell us is what is in it for him to gain. Because if you recall, in 2004, there was an attempt by some mercenaries to overthrow the government in Equatorial Guinea.
Absolutely.
And allegedly, if you can recall, the son of the former Prime Minister of England, Margaret Thatcher, was allegedly involved. And he was tried in South Africa, he was convicted, and they paid a substantial fine. But during the course of that case, it transpires that some of these mercenaries, they were after the oil wealth in that country because some of them have been promised certain things. They were arrested in Zimbabwe while they were loading the aircraft in order to move ammunition to Equatorial Guinea. And those mercenaries were led by a gentleman known as Simon Mann. Now, he's free, he's in South Africa now, to the best of my recollection. Now, this Andrew, what did they stand to gain by having a sleeper cell? And I'm very concerned the way the police are handling this. We have to be very careful so that we don't have a force that turn out, we don't have a higher force whereby people are hiring the police, the security agencies in order to settle scores. And the wife said something that there is a contractual dispute between him and one individual. And it is that individual that is making all these allegations. Because, you see, we have to be very careful of wasting resources going on a goose chase. And if care is not taken, what the police are doing it's going to end up in a good shape because, number one, the man is not coming here. Number two, extradition is a very, very serious issue, and it's very costly exercise. If they are going to bring him here, he has to be extradited back to Nigeria. And that's the different thing. We come to that. And you see, when you are dealing with some of these fugitives from justice, the first starting point is persuasion. You can persuade them to return back to the country to face the criminal allegation against them. And it has happened before. Number one, there's a man called N.S. Akingbola, the Intercontinental Bank man in those days. You know, he was in the United Kingdom. Yeah. After a while, he returned back to Nigeria. Now, curiously enough, the present Attorney General was his lawyer as at that time. But we don't know the state of the case. There was this Attorney General, Adoke, regarding the Malabu the Malabu oil deal. He was in Netherlands also, or Holland also, Netherlands. And thereafter they said, oh, he's a fugitive, we will bring him to justice. There were a lot of hue and cry. The man voluntarily returned to Nigeria. Subsequently, he was acquitted. So what you need to do is to try and persuade them to return. Because if you go on extradition, you have to be very careful. Like this Andrew, number one, no court in United Kingdom will extradite him to Nigeria. I can tell you that. Really? Number one, okay, what is the punishment for treason in Nigeria? Because that's the allegation against him. Is death penalty. Now, in United Kingdom, there is no death penalty. That is one issue, which I want you to know. No, but it has happened in the past, but no longer there is. The worst scenario is life imprisonment. Now, in your country, in which you are a national, we don't have a death penalty. Then you want us to send you to a country whereby you are going to face a death penalty. And now, under the Human Rights Act, Article 3 of the Human Rights says that you must not even send people to where they are going to face degrading and dehuman treatment. Now, if the government in Nigeria said, look, we want to extradite this man, the court is going to look at, number one, your prison condition. They're going to look at your judicial system, whether how cases do move smoothly. And you will recall, the prosecutors need to be very careful and mind their words. Now, this policeman is a spokesperson, is providing ironic commentary. The fugitive is providing ironic commentary. You will recall, during the Magbu era, they promised that we will get Desiani back to Nigeria. We are going to continue on extradition. Up to now, where's Desiani? All
right, so invariably you're saying that he will not be extradited.
Yes, I can tell you that, Scott Gary. It's not going to happen in a million years. Because, number one, the courts will not send him to where he's going to face a death penalty. And you know from experience yourself that British national, once they have issues abroad, whereby they are going to face the death penalty, the government sets in and make sure they use all the available diplomatic channels to make sure they are not executed. There is a grandmother in Bali now. She was convicted for drug running with some other Nigerians and others. Those Nigerians have been executed. But up to now, about 5 years down the line, the woman is still in prison because the government in the United Kingdom are fighting hard that you cannot execute any of our citizens. We don't allow it. Those who have had problems in Saudi Arabia, none of them, they didn't allow them. So that's what is going to happen in this case.
So that leaves the case hanging as it is. So let me come to you now. When I mentioned earlier about the matter of we having protests that led to regime changing, I was looking at Nigeria in particular, not Africa in general. But he has mentioned some things and about the case, how the police is handling it, and also the issues around it. But before the protest happened, that's the hashtag End Bad Governance, we recall that security agencies had mentioned that they got information that certain persons were trying to infiltrate and also take advantage of the protest, and they were appealing to protesters not to go ahead with the protest. But at the end of the day, we saw what happened. Some persons, in Abuja especially, we saw how some persons and lives were, lost in the process. people, there was attacks here and there, and then in one of the northern states, we saw some persons flying a flag of a foreign country. From your perspective, from all that has happened leading up to now, the handling of the case and what's in it for these persons, what do you see? Well,
in the first instance, I would like to highlight one thing, is the inexperience of those who organized the protest that led to where we are currently. In the first instance, the moment you organize, you are planning a protest, and then you are saying there's no leadership. Look, nature abhors vacuum. Some other people will step in because you don't have a leadership. And therefore, the protest is likely going to get hijacked. And that is what I think we saw with EndSARS, and we have seen with this one. So I cannot see a situation where you have a leadership protest in Nigeria. We have been having protests in this country for a long time.
Absolutely.
And it has never gotten to this stage. Now, the second error made, in my view, is the idea to come up with Tinubu must go. Now, the problem is this. You are in a democracy where the rule of law has to prevail. You have a constitution which stipulates method of removing political office holders. Anything outside that, it's illegal under the law, is unconstitutional. And that is the position. And in fact, when those were pointed out, they quickly removed that from the demands. And then you have days of rage, yes. 10 days of rage. Again, when you look at the word rage, what does it connote? In the eyes of a security man, the Nigerian police force or the DSS, immediately you start thinking, oh, there'll be violence, it's going to be very tough and all that. And we saw a policeman killed. The first person that died was a police officer. Some other people were killed. I think about 27 civilians were also died in the process. We saw hoodlums hijack, the protest. They were destroying the massive destruction in Kano, destroying government facilities, NCC facilities, destroying, Chicken Republic, private individual businesses were being destroyed. Like you again highlighted, we saw some people holding, foreign flag. And as far as I'm concerned, those are criminals. Those who perpetrated those acts are criminals. They are different from the peaceful protesters. When you really look at it, in many parts of the country, the protest was peaceful. We didn't have vandalism, massive destruction. So that leads to the issue of security services. They have a responsibility to the Nigerian people. If you commit a crime, you have to be processed through the criminal justice system. And therefore, I will never support the prosecution of protesters, and which I believe is not the case. If I'm to believe Muyiwa Adejobi, he said they've released about 26 peaceful protesters and all that. But those who are found to have, committed some infractions needs to be examined properly. And I think that is the stage where we are now. Now, in terms of the police approach to it, I would never agree with the statement of the PRO, the PRO of the Nigerian Police Force. There is a thing of vindictiveness in it. And for me, that is highly unprofessional. Right. That creates a wrong impression. I'm sure the Nigerian Police Force will not ordinarily accuse people of crimes in that nature to the point of going into to search the NLC building, the second floor, where you have Iva Valley Bookshop, without having some reasonable reasons. That would be some reasonable ground, because they are also accountable. They have to explain their position. NLC is not just another organization. It's a very powerful organization of the Nigerian workers, which have the capacity to disrupt the economy. Right. And I'm sure that is not what...
Continue with your line of thought. We have to quickly go on a break. When we return, you'll continue.
Creamy Camp, which helps to nourish and energize your kids.
Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on the break, we were speaking on the matter, talking about the Nigeria Police Force launching a manhunt for 2 individuals accused of plotting to overthrow the democratically elected government in Nigeria, in person of Andrew Wynne, also known as Andrew Povich, and Lucky Obiyan, who is a Nigerian. And you were speaking, Adejobi, on the matter, talking about the police, the handling of this matter, how the police went to the NLC office where they just invaded, some would call it an invasion, and then invading the bookshop and then getting certain information that eventually led to the asking the NLC president rather to come for an interrogation.
Yes, they're actually trying to probe and look at the relationship between NLC, Joe Ajaero, and Iva Valley.
Yes.
Iva Valley has been in existence for a long time. It was over 18th of November 1949 massacre in Enugu coal mines. That was where the name Iva Valley came up. In the 60s, 70s, the Wahab Goodlucks, the leadership of the Nigerian trade unions at that time, were also, trading using Iva Valley bookshop. And up to the point when Comrade Olaoni also has a bookshop called Iva Valley in Bodija, Ibadan. And of course, literatures and other materials were dropped in those bookshops. So you have this Iva Valley also in NLC building, where materials are dropped by anybody. The police might find them seditious or offensive one way or the other, but bookshop is a public place. So in my view, I think this issue will be probably more than that. You have to give the police presumption of having their facts, before they could go to this extent, escalate issues to this extent, which may involve a diplomatic row with Britain. What we don't have is the evidence. But we should not forget, we should always bear one thing in mind, that the High G kept insisting during negotiations with some lawyers representing, the protesters, that look, we have intelligence to say that something would happen, that there is the likelihood that there will be an attempt to hijack that protest. Yes. So we don't know what he has until when these are put before the courts. That is when the whole facts will become clear. In relation to the charges which my colleague, commented on, we still don't know what Andrew particularly will be charged with. So you cannot conclude that he will not be subject to extradition. If he's not being charged for a treasonable offense, maybe sedition, then I cannot see Britain obstructing that. So we don't know. Look, we've had the court saying, order these people, but specifically what Andrew will be charged with is what we don't know. If he's charged with sedition and is not treasonable felony, punishable by death sentence, there is no way how Britain will obstruct that because we have an extradition treaty with Britain. So the bottom line at the end of the day is the whole thing is up in the air. The police must have their own reasons and have their evidence. And I'm sure that some other agencies of government like DSS will be interested in what they have, and we still don't know what the facts are until when these issues, are put before the court. In relation to Andrew and John Obiyan, who both of them happens to be British nationals, at the end of the day, they probably will have their days in court if they are not charged with offense, punishable by death.
But let me still stay with you because he asked a question earlier, and I think I threw that question to you talking about what's in it for these persons who want to, overthrow or who are plotting to overthrow this government. What do you think is in it for them?
Whether it's real or not, until when we see what the police have, we don't know. No one knows. They must have their own information or evidence.
Yes.
We don't know. They went to raid. We don't know what they found in telephones or in his house. They have not told us all that. We have also heard from the wife saying that, this issue is about somebody owing them. All these issues will be looked into. Don't forget, when you get to the courts, these issues will be examined properly. And I can assure you that lawyers who are willing to stand up, to defend them in the country. So the fact of the matter is, what seems very clear is that Iva Valley has always been a contentious subject to the states, the bookshop. Not because Andrew is the one managing it. It has always been in the past. Where in the 70s, the military raided Iva Valley. In the 80s, in 1986, Olaoni's bookshop was raided. Comrade Olaoni was arrested. I was arrested along with him. And over posters. So, as a student, we were just printing posters. The state seems to be very sensitive around it. The reason is very clear. It was actually Britain, Nigeria under colonial rule, the British colonial masters that actually attacked the Nigerian peaceful, unharmed protesters in Enugu on the 18th of November, 1949. that led to the death of 21 people and over 15 injured. So some people on the left felt that they need to keep the memory alive so that we will never forget what happened there. And that is why the issue of Iver Valley, springing up again, and then people selling books, left, most of the books being sold are left literatures, issues like Europe, Underdeveloped Africa, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Communist Manifesto, and so on and so forth. So I think government is more sensitive, particularly the Nigerian police force, given the fact that Russian flags were raised in some states, 2 or 3 states, and given what happened in the Niger Republic. So the security agencies rightly may be more interested in investigating to see whether in reality there is some plan to overthrow the government or not. So far, the police is claiming they have that evidence, but it has to be tested in court.
Absolutely, it has to be tested in court. I saw you were smiling, and when he was responding to some of the issues you raised. Yeah, I know that you want to address that, but quickly now, before you touch on what he has said, it's now a matter of a security matter versus a rights issue, where people have a right to protest. And then you're also looking at the matter of ensuring that there is the security of lives and property in all of it, and that the government of the day also is still safe, whichever way we look at it. How do we manage this, or how do we draw the line?
Yeah, the way you draw the line is very simple. You carry out a balancing exercise. And that even happened during the protest, because the right to protest is not an absolute right. Because, number one, you can't say because you are protesting, you go into hospital, destroying things and what have you, and say, oh, we have the right to protest, okay? So it's what is called legally a qualified right, whereby we can say, no, don't do this. And what the court did during the last protest, which we must all commend, is that the judges don't say, don't protest.
But they said, but we still saw some persons, pushing the narrative saying that they are still restricting us from protesting. No.
You see, this is the point, because number one, this is where the balancing exercise comes in. Some people want to protest, and they don't want any restriction whatsoever. Then you have the state saying, look, we don't mind you protesting, but you have to do it in
within the confines of the law.
Within the confine of the law and in particular area. Yeah. So what the judge will do in that scenario is to balance the interests of the state and the protester. And the judges did them well by saying, look, we are confining you, you can protest, but this is the restriction. And the states will be there just to monitor, to keep the peace. And in any process, you see, every protest will probably start as a peaceful protest. But along the line, there's no society without any social problems. And there are some people who are this is their stock in trade. Even in United Kingdom, in America, when people are protesting, you will still see people saying we have arrested about 10 people for public order.
The anarchists.
Yes, the anarchists and whatever you. Because for public order offenses. Because some of these people are going out, they want to cause destruction, they don't even happy with the government in the state and what have you. But the nut and bolt is this. Nobody is saying police should not do their job, okay? Because they have a duty, statutory duty for that matter. Yeah. And we respect that. But those jobs must be done in accordance with the law. And we have to be very careful of timing. It's very important too. Take, for instance, if you listen to the police spokesperson, he said it was when they invited Ajero, the labor leader. Yeah. They now realize they are not the one letting the property, the bookshop, to Andrew. Yeah. Now, do you really need to call the labor leader to get that information during the course of your investigation?
The investigation should have given them
exactly. If you carry out a proper investigation, now the agent managing that property, is he not paying some tax to the municipal authority in that place? You can easily do that. Even if you look at, if you have issues with Andrew, for that matter, for, sedition, what have you. Then if you look at his bank statement, it will show you where he's been paying the rent for the bookshop. So you don't need Ajero, the labor leader, to come. Otherwise, you see, people will start reading minutes to your action. That the only reason why you are doing this, because they are fighting for the common man. And if you are not careful, the other side of it, people will think you are just persecuting them because they oppose the government, this and that. So, and one has to be very careful. And that's where I have issue with the police. And in this case, you declare the man wanted. You are putting 20 million. That 20 million bounty, you can spend it on the police officers who are working day and night to protect all of us. And number two is the man on the run in the first instance. Because if you listen to him, he said he's been communicating with them through WhatsApp. Yeah. And now, he even said, if you want to ask me any question, I'm happy to do that. If you don't want to go by Zoom, I'm happy to attend to your embassy in London so that I can be questioned. I don't know anything about all this. So
he's not a fugitive.
And you are still going ahead saying, if you're a businessman and you're a good man, come back here. Yeah. Look, see, who will come back? I won't come back either, knowing fully well. And you see, as a prosecutor, you have to be very careful of your comment. Because if you are not careful, you can prejudice the investigation. And the Nigerian prosecutors, they make this mountain out of a molehill. You see, you can promise little and deliver big. You have one saying, I'm going to get Yaya Bello at all costs to this. Today, we don't even know where Yaya Bello is. You had one before saying, we must bring the Siani to this country under my tenure. Today, the Siani is still in London. Now, you see, if at the end of the day, people are going to analyze what you are doing and say, look, don't mind them. They always blow hot and cold. But at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. To the legal system in Nigeria. You see, if you see all these prosecutors abroad, once they just give you the synopsis of the case, they keep their mouth shut because some of that comment can lead to all sorts of trouble during examination. Perhaps
the peculiarity of our society.
No, it's a very bad peculiarity because some years ago in this country, somebody went on telly with a list and said, this is the looters list, you can recall. And at the end of the day, where are all the looters now? Up to today, because somebody is going to say you have convicted them already. If you have the evidence, present it. And I agree with Mr. Show, present it in court, let it be tested, let it be subject to serious cross-examination, and the decision will be taken. You see, this is an adversarial system of justice. You are sitting there as an independent adjudicator, Show me is there, he gives his own side, I give my own side, and you decide. That is the way to go. What they should do in this case is very simple. Right. If the man is willing to talk, they should talk to him. And that will help them to decide whether there's a criminal case to be established. And they are using the Interpol, according to them. They said they've pressed the tool. And the Interpol cannot even pick him and just say, go to Nigeria. It's not Kano. And the man is not in Kenya. So he's in London. It's not going. The only way they can only help you locate him, and then the extradition will start from there. Right. I think that's the right way to go.
Now, he quickly mentioned something on the bounty placed on him as well as the Obiyan fellow. Do you also think that it's unnecessary?
Well,
because he has said he's not a fugitive and he's ready to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a standard practice when high-valued people are wanted by countries, law enforcement agents, including FBI. It could be on anything, treason, drug, or anything, and they place bounty. I don't see that as exceptional. It's not the first time we've done it in Nigeria. It's a standard practice elsewhere. What I think is regrettable in the police action is that a very brilliant police PRO, over the years, highly respected, made those remarks in a way that the tone connotes a kind of vindictiveness. The British will take note of that. Yeah. And that is one of the things which the Nigerian police force needs to learn from. Because it's about perception. It's not about reality. Yeah. It does not mean he will be persecuted in Nigeria. He will simply be prosecuted here. But the moment you give it in a wrong tone, you're sending a wrong message. But I'm sure the Nigerian police force will learn from it. And then one way or the other, it depends on what Andrew will be charged with. If he's been charged with sedition or some other minor offenses that does not carry death penalty, he probably will be allowed to return or will be repatriated to Nigeria, or extradited.
We'll get to the root of this case from the way it's been handled.
I think we will, one way or the other. The reason is at a point in time, if it becomes a diplomatic issue, the Nigerian Foreign Ministry will demand for some evidence, because there will be some discussions with not only the British High Commissioner, with also the with the Home Government, the UK Home Secretary in UK, to look at what do you have. The courts in UK will also examine what they have. Is it reasonable, to extradite somebody on this basis? Is it a crime punishable by death sentence? Those are the parameters. So it's not the end. It's just enough for the police to say, look, we want you to come back. We are placing a bounty on you. At the end of the day, before any court, except Andrew agrees to come back and John Obiyan voluntarily, before any court can order extradition in UK, they will look at the punishment. Does it carry death penalty? Number two, they look at the circumstances surrounding the case. Number three, they will demand for more evidence to show whether there is a reasonable ground, cause for extradition.
All right. And that would be a fine place to leave this conversation. We only hope for the best at the end of the day. We get to the root of the matter, whichever way this matter is to be handled. Thank you so much for your time, UK Solicitor and Public Affairs Analyst Olufemi Aino, as well as Public Affairs Analyst Abiodun Shomi, for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.